Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Assemblywoman Backus. Assemblyman Carter. Present. Assemblywoman Duran. Here. Assemblywoman Hardy. Here. Assemblywoman Howdigi. Here. Assemblywoman Kasama. Here. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Here. Assemblyman O'Neill. Here. Assemblywoman Torres. Here. Assemblyman Yeager. Here. Assemblyman Urick. Here. Chair Marzola.
And I am here. Welcome everybody that is here in Carson City, anyone in Las Vegas, and anyone listening over the phone or internet. Today we are going to hear one bill, Senate Bill 427, and we also have a work session. I will be doing the work session first. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping announcements. Please turn off or silence all your electronic devices, whether it's a cell phone, computer. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door. If you have a business card, please provide one. For those testifying online, please be sure to mute your microphone. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state and spell your name for the record. As always, I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions, even though we may not agree. And with that, we will move to our work session. Please remember, work session is to take action on measures the committee has heard in previous meetings. It is not customary for the committee to take testimony or otherwise rehear any bills. However, I may invite a witness to come forward for clarification or questions during our consideration of any measure. And with that, we will begin the work session with Senate Bill 57. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Margie Thomas for the record. Senate Bill 57 revises provisions relating to insurance. It is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure on behalf of the Division of Insurance of the Department of Business and Industry. It was heard on May 1st, and there is one proposed amendment which is located in the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 57.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Torres. Next will be Senate Bill 78. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Senate Bill 78 makes various changes relating to property. It is sponsored by Senator Donate, and there are two proposed amendments which are attached to the work session document.
Thank you. Members, any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Please raise your hands. I have a nay from Assemblyman Urick, a nay from Assemblywoman Kasama, a nay from Assemblywoman Hardy, and a nay from Assemblyman O'Neill. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Duran.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next will be Senate Bill 106. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Senate Bill 106 revises provisions relating to ophthalmic dispensing. It is sponsored by Senator Severs Ganser, heard on May 10th, and there is one proposed amendment attached to the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any discussion on Senate Bill 106? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Hardy. Next, we will work session Senate Bill 134.
Senate Bill 134 revises provisions relating to vision insurance is sponsored by Senator Severs Ganser, heard on May 10th, and there is one proposed amendment in the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 134.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama. We will move to Senate Bill 147. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Senate Bill 147 makes changes relating to employment. It is sponsored by Senator Lang, heard on May 5th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 147? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass. I have a first from Assemblywoman Torres, a second from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Backus. Next, we will move to Senate Bill 194.
Senate Bill 194 revises provisions relating to step therapy protocols. It is sponsored by Senator Orenshaw, heard on May 17th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any question on Senate Bill 194? I don't see any. I will entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? A second from Assemblyman Urick. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Urick. Next, we will move to Senate Bill 249.
Senate Bill 249 revises provisions relating to cosmetology. It is sponsored by Senator Lang, heard on May 8th. And there are two proposed amendments provided in the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 249? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? Second from Assemblywoman Hardy. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Carter. Next is Senate Bill 283.
Senate Bill 283 revises certain provisions relating to healthcare records. It is sponsored by Senator Pacina, heard on April 28th, and there are 7 proposed amendments attached to the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Duran. Next, we will move to Senate Bill 302.
Senate Bill 302 revises provisions relating to health care to sponsored by Senator Orenshaw, heard on May 17th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
Do you pass? So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Hands up, please. I have a nay from Assemblyman Urick, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblywoman Hardy, and Assemblyman O'Neill. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Torres. You're welcome. We will move to Senate Bill 310.
Senate Bill 310 establishes provisions relating to dentistry. It is sponsored by Senator Goicoechea, and it was heard on May 15th. There are 7 proposed amendments, and I would like to point out that there is a mock-up attached that was prepared by the Legal Division, and 1 through 3 were discussed during the hearing. The 4 through the 7th amendments worked off of the mock-up that was provided at the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass on Senate Bill 310.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy, a second from Assemblyman Urick. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Urick. Next is Senate Bill 336.
Senate Bill 336 revises provisions relating to the regulation of certain healing arts, is sponsored by Senator Orenshaw and heard on May 12th, and there is one proposed amendment attached to the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? Second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama. Next is Senate Bill 355. Mrs. Thomas, you may begin when you're ready.
Senate Bill 355 revises provisions relating to financial services. It is sponsored by Senator Lang, and there is one proposed amendment which is attached to the work session document.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 355? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? Second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Backus. Next is Senate Bill 370.
Senate Bill 370 revises provisions relating to the protection of consumer information. It's sponsored by Senator Canizaro, and there are 10 proposed amendments. I would like to point out that the first 8 are attached to the work session document, and 9 and 10 are not attached as a separate document, but are provided in the work session page.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? A second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to, I'll vote it out, but I'm going to reserve the right. These amendments just came in, and I really need some time to look at them more closely to see if they address the issues that we brought up in original testimony. So it is a very hesitant yes that I will give. So, thank you, Chair.
Completely understandable, and thank you for the discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I have a nay from Assemblyman Urich, a nay from Assemblywoman Kasama, and a nay from Assemblywoman Hardy. Okay. And a nay from Assemblyman O'Neill. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Carter. Next is Senate Bill 381.
Senate Bill 381 prohibits a landlord from requiring a tenant to pay certain charges. It is sponsored by Senator Harris, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, any questions on Senate Bill 381? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? A second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Hardy. Next is Senate Bill 386.
Senate Bill 386 revises provisions related to barbering. It is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, heard on May 3rd. There is one proposed amendment that was discussed at the hearing, so there is no attachment to this. Thanks.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 386? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will take a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy, a second from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Next is Senate Bill 393.
Senate Bill 393 revised provisions related to dental insurance is sponsored by Senator Seavers Cancer, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 393? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdiggy. Is there a second? Second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman O'Neill. And our last Senate bill on our work session today for now is Senate Bill 436.
Senate Bill 436 revised provisions relating to service contracts is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor, heard on May 8th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Senate Bill 436? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdiggy, a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Carter. That will conclude our work session as of right now. We will move to our bill hearing. 1 minute recess. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 427, which revises provisions relating to occupational safety and health. Senator, you may begin when you're ready. And before you get started, Senator, I just want to kind of give everybody a picture of the lay of the land for this bill. The senator will present, and then we will do 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes in opposition, and 30 minutes in neutral. Before opposition starts, I will give opposition, the first person, 10 minutes before their 30 minutes starts. Senator, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Edgar Flores for the record. And Madam Chair, with your permission, if I may do the presentation, answer any questions that you may have, and then if I may be excused immediately after the questioning of the committee, as Senator Education is waiting for me to go and do a work session.
Of course.
And just wanted to be respectful and not feel that I'm walking out on anybody speaking. Madam Chair, I am here to proudly present Senate Bill 427. I am joined by Cynthia Cermeño, who many of you have had an opportunity to work with now, but she is here representing the Nevada Justice Environmental Coalition. It is a whole host of folk from a large range of organizations and nonprofits, and including some of our labor organizations. During the interim, as many of you, I had an opportunity to meet with folk about issues that we thought were particularly important that we address this particular session. As we all know, we've been through some very difficult times in the state of Nevada, particularly our essential workers. We've spent the last several years, namely during the pandemic, talking about creating safeguards, protections for our outdoor workers, folk that, while everybody else was going home and was being asked to stay home, a lot of us have family members, personal relationships with folk who were out there taking care of very essential work in this state. With that mission, we set out to create some parameters and safeguards to protect outdoor workers. And that's the genesis of Senate Bill 427. I also wanted, Madam Chair, to say thank you to, I know there's a whole host of folk that are continue to be in opposition to this bill. I wanted to let you know we have amended this bill now 5 times. And even with all those amendments, unfortunately, we still don't get the opposition there. There was a last-minute request for an amendment, but unfortunately, that still didn't get the entire opposition there. So this is as good as we could get it on our end, but I am incredibly grateful for everybody who sat down with me and provided their concerns, and I will preemptively address those for the committee. But Madam Chair, the bill does 3 main things. First, it creates 2 triggers. And one trigger is activated when it's 105 degrees. As we know, this will mostly apply to the South. When it's 105 degrees Fahrenheit or worse, there is now a requirement that we provide hydration periods, water, and when possible, some type of shade for our outdoor workers. And I am presenting that after a heavy amendment because there are other states that have similar requirements in place that are much lower. I'm talking about 85, 90 degrees, 95 degrees, depending on the state. But through compromise and trying to work with the opposition, we moved that to 105. That's only a few days out of the year, ever, per year. And I can give you exact data on that in a second, Madam Chair. But all we are saying is that in the state of Nevada, if you're going to be working in a condition where it's 105 degrees or worse, that we provide drinking water to our workers. All of you, every single one of you has water in front of you now. And I think we would think maybe it's difficult to think that people would push back on that. But I think that is a minimal standard that we should say, look, we can abide by this. In fact, a lot of folk will tell you that it is already a common practice in their industry, and that some of the opposition will say, well, we're already doing this, so what's the point of this bill? And I respect that. But what I want to do is I want to mimic the good actors that are already doing these things and create a uniformity across the board so that individuals who are cutting grass in a construction site or in some other a site that exposes them to extreme heat, that we're protecting them too, and that there's a minimal standard. The second thing, and the second trigger is when the air quality index is at 201, that triggers a requirement that we provide some type of respirator or mask to the outdoor worker in that scenario. And the reason we want that is, again, we've seen some of the fires that have been happening out here in northern Nevada. And in fact, I had an opportunity to speak with an employer, and he confessed that during the fires, there was individuals working in very poor quality air. And unfortunately, as a consequence to that, while they worked one day, they missed the next 2 or 3 because unfortunately they were breathing in that heavy fire. My point to it is, by creating this minimal safeguard and this trigger, in no way are we suggesting we are stopping work. We are only saying that if we're going to continue working, we're going to create a minimal standard across the board on creating some minimal safeguards. And I think it helps everyone. It helps the industry, and to say, look, we are authorized to continue working, but at the same exact time, it protects employees. I think it's a middle ground, and it's a great compromise. Again, it's very few days out of the year that this is applicable because the air quality index is typically not that high. This number of 201 was based off of just best practices, and we'll go into the data on how that number was selected, and Cynthia will go into that in a second. And then the third thing is that we have a plan in place. You'll see specifically in the bill that we want to make sure that we are providing shade. And shade, it means a lot of things, right? For some industries, that means they'll be able to go under a tree if it's an open air area that they're working on, or maybe they'll take a canopy. But you'll see there that we specifically, through compromise, put language in there that if the shade or the canopy or whatever we're using to create that shade creates a hazard, then we don't have to trigger that. Because obviously the last thing we would want to do is to be on a job site or to be on the top of some rooftop or something, and that putting that canopy or that shaded area would actually create a more dangerous hazard because it could fly off or be pushed off. So we put in there specific languages through compromise to ensure that if that's the case, then that rule does not trigger. Everything else we left incredibly vague, and you'll see it is very vaguely written because we understand that every industry is different. And what we didn't want to do is to pretend that one size fits all. So what we asked rather is we create the minimal standard, protective gear if the air quality is 201 or worse, water being provided with hydration periods if it's 105 degrees or worse, and then everything else we left pretty broadly written, just so that there's a mitigation plan in place. And Madam Chair, the only other thing that I would like to address is one of the requests that was made is that we punt this off to OSHA and let them come up with regs. But even if we would have accepted that amendment, it still would have kept about 80% of the opposition in opposition because they still don't agree with the bill, and they didn't agree with punting it down to OSHA in that way. Which leads to my point that I think we did reach an impasse. The question that I am posing to you as a body today is, do we believe that we should create a minimal standard in the state of Nevada? And this minimal standard that we're starting with is 105 degrees and 201 air quality index. And Madam Chair, I mentioned previously that I wanted to just tell you how many times that's actually going to trigger. In other words, how many times a year, and this is statistical data because we don't know obviously what's going to how many days will be 105 next year. But if just to give you some numbers, in 2022, up here in northern Nevada, there was one time that it was over 105 degrees. In 2022, there was 38 days in southern Nevada that it hit about 105 or greater, specifically Las Vegas. In 2021, there was 57 days that hit 105 or worse in Las Vegas. In 2021, there was one day up here in the north in Reno. In 2020, in Las Vegas, it was 60 days. And in 2020, up here in Reno, it was 0 days. That's just the heat. So that's how many times this bill would even trigger. But you'll hear from a lot of folk in the private sector now that tell you, of course we give hydration periods to our folk that are working out there in very severe conditions. That's just good practice. That's just what a good employer does. So I am asking that we make all employers abide by those good practices. And with that, Madam Chair, if I may hand it over. Oh, by the way, there is an amendment. And again, this is just working with emergency services. You'll see on page 4 of the bill that we exempted anybody who's doing emergency services, law enforcement, firefighters, et cetera, because we obviously know that when they collectively bargain, they have a whole host of things that are much more stringent than this bill itself, but also we wanted to make sure that we weren't getting in the way of if somebody's answering to a medical emergency, that somehow these requirements would in any way limit them. On top of that, you're also going to see that we included yet another amendment that says environmental service providers to include solid waste, recycling, and hazardous waste are also being excluded. Again, that's not that's not who we were trying to capture. And in good faith, we have amended them, and there's they are exempt from this bill. And with that, Madam Chair, if I may pass it over to Ms. Hermaño.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Cynthia Cermeño Moore, and I'm the Coalition Coordinator for the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. We are a coalition of 14 Nevada-based organizations throughout the state. The NEJC has been working with Senator Flores on SB 427, the Extreme Weather Conditions Bill, to help protect both of our outdoor and indoor workers in uncontrolled climate environments. Current NRS does not go far enough to ensure that these employees are able to do their job safely. The Extreme Weather Working Conditions Bill wants to give additional and specific protection, not just for employees working directly under the sun, but also for those who are exposed to extreme heat and poor air quality while working indoors. Nevada is home to 2 of the fastest warming cities in the country, Reno and Las Vegas. It is important that we do everything possible to be able to protect our family, friends, and neighbors who are exposed to extreme weather working conditions. Many of us know that working either outdoors in kitchens or warehouses we all have heard stories about how the extreme heat is affecting our friends, neighbors, and family. Last year, my 22-year-old neighbor who works in construction during one of the extreme heat waves asked his supervisor for a break because he was trying to feel ill. His supervisor refused to let him take this break, and as a result, my neighbor ended up passing out. He had a heat stroke and ended up missing 3 days of work. Also last year, my uncle, who does not work outdoors but works indoors in new construction homes installing the kitchen and bathroom cabinets, often finds himself working in homes that do not have the air conditioning installed yet. Oftentimes, these homes feel much hotter than the temperature outdoors. He's been doing this type of work for many years but never felt ill until last summer. He had to go to the ER one day. He did not recognize the signs of heat stroke, nor did he know that because he is on high blood pressure medication that he was more prone to experience heat illnesses. Exposure to extreme heat of 95 degrees Fahrenheit and above can result in heat stroke, heat exhaustion, cramps, rashes, and injuries. You will hear heat is also responsible for more people dying in the United States than any other type of weather event, including hurricanes, tornadoes. Current NRS says that water must be provided, but that does not specify how much. The CDC recommends drinking 1 quart of water per hour to avoid heat stress. That's how we arrived at the 1 quart of water per hour found in this bill, and this also goes for the air quality piece that you find in this bill. The other thing that this bill does, it also defines what poor air quality is, and every year Nevada is seeing more wildfires, or we're getting smoke from other states that are experiencing a lot more wildfires. Our wildfire season is much longer. And we arrived at the AQI, the air quality index of 201 or higher, because that's when it is considered very unhealthy for everyone. And that's when they start making recommendations for people to take protections, either to stay indoors or wear a mask if you have to be outdoors. It is also estimated that people that are exposed to poor air quality have to go to the doctor at a much higher rate, and especially those that already have asthma or other breathing conditions. SB 427 is a bill that will protect workers that are exposed to extreme weather conditions. This will allow them to continue to do their job safely. And as our climate is getting warmer and we're seeing more bad air quality days, this will help ensure that our workers that keep our cities going are able to do their work safely. Thank you.
Are you going to walk us through the bill?
If you'd like us to, Madam Chair. And sorry, I got my bill out of order here. So, Madam Chair, I am looking at page 2, section 1, lines 11 through 15. And this is what triggers the requirement or the establishment of a mitigation heat illness plan. And it triggers when there's 105 degree Fahrenheit or greater, regardless if it's an indoor or an outdoor worker. And the program must include that we provide drinkable water of 1 quart per employee for each hour that they are required to work. Number 2, access by an employee to an area with shade that is open to the air or provided with ventilation or cooling. And what I am trying to capture there, if you're an outdoor worker and you're standing outside with some type of shade, a canopy, a tree, that works. Otherwise, there's a lot of industries, they'll talk about how they'll just run into their car, turn on their AC for a little bit, cool down there, or have an opportunity to go to the restroom. Every industry will be able to address that in a way that makes sense to them. Number 3, periods throughout the workday for employees to hydrate. Again, this is only in a scenario where it's 105 degrees or greater. And this is normal now. Any good employer will tell you that is very normal, that when folk are on their job site, it's incredibly hot. Folk will periodically go and get some water break, throw some water in themselves. There's different ways of doing that. Some of them have these huge water tanks on site, and they'll grab a hose, and sometimes they'll do that. whatever works for that particular industry and company, they'll continue to do what they do now. Number 4, a system for monitoring employees for signs of heat illness. I think these are just customary best practices. You should know if one of your employees has anything that's potentially going to put them in any type of danger. There should be some type of system that you know that. And I've seen it. I've been on many job sites, and sometimes they'll tell you to look at certain things, even at the color of your urine. Sometimes they'll ask you to take periodically your temperature, sometimes the tone and how you look. But these are just practices that every industry will implement that makes sense for them, because again, that's not always applicable all across the board. I just want them to create something that will give some guidance on monitoring how an employee, if they have any heat illness signs, that we have something in place. Number 5, procedures for responding to a medical emergency related to heat illness. Again, I cannot imagine any good employer who doesn't have that in place already. They probably have some rules, particularly those folk who are sent to far remote areas and they're by themselves, and maybe it's a 2 or 3, 4 person job. I'm sure there are now already in place. Look, if somebody's feeling ill, here's what you're going to do. Here's who you're going to call. Here's how you report it, how your colleagues report it, et cetera. So we just want them to create some type of plan. I'm not dictating what that plan looks like. Line 27 through 29, sub C, the establishment of a training program for employees who may be affected by issues related to heat illness, which must include without limitation information regarding the different types of heat illness and the common signs and symptoms of heat illness, working conditions in which heat illness may occur, the importance of acclimatization, and the recovery procedures after experiencing heat illness. I again believe that most good businesses do this now. Sub D, the establishment of a program to mitigate exposure to poor air quality on any day employees are exposed to air with an Environmental Protection Agency air quality index value of 201 or greater. And again, the program must include without limitation proper respiratory protection equipment, which may include without limitation disposable filtering face pieces respirators, half face mask respirators, full face piece respirators. And we're making it again incredibly broad, Madam Chair, because we understand that in poor air quality, not every mask is the same, right? We understand that some folk, maybe when they're painting, they'll use a type of mask. When you're working with certain dangerous chemicals, you'll wear a different type of mask. You're working with poor air quality outdoors, that may be a different mask. So we're just making it abundantly clear that we want you to provide a mask. We don't know good business practices that don't already do this. Again, we are just trying to create uniformity in what is the bare minimum we believe in the state of Nevada you should do based on the best practices that are out there already. Now I'm looking at page 3. Again, when the air quality index is at a poor quality, we again want to just make sure that we're providing folk with water that's drinkable. We want to ensure that there's access by an employee to an indoor environment with appropriate ventilation and air filtering. And again, in some job sites, that may just mean being able to go to your car and turn on the AC for a bit, or your van. That may be going to the restroom. There's a whole host of things, what that may look like. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But again, we want the industry to be able to do that. Periods throughout the workday for an employee to hydrate, just like when it's incredibly hot, when it's the air quality is horrible. We just want to make sure that there's going to be hydration periods throughout the time that an employee is working in a very horrible air quality scenario, that we also are making sure that we're taking care of them and they're monitoring their health. And 5, a system for monitoring employees for signs of health effects resulting to exposure to poor air quality. Same thing. We just want to make sure that folk have the bare minimum understanding. If you're having these symptoms, you may be, they may be as a consequence to symptoms of being in poor air quality. Here's some of the safety precautions that should trigger. That's all it is, Madam Chair. I just wanted to once again say what you'll see on page 4 is where we provided the carve out to ensure that emergency services, which include law enforcement, firefighting agency, and any provider of an emergency medical services are exempt from this requirement, again, because that wasn't the intent to capture them. And then with the added amendment of Madam Chair of also exempting environmental services providers to include solid waste, recycling, and hazardous waste. And with that, Madam Chair, any questions you may have?
Thank you. Committee members, are there any questions? Assemblyman Yurick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for the presentation this morning. I have to say, it sounds like your intentions are purely noble, and I think all of us here would want to have safe working conditions for our employees. I guess by the way, I haven't had a whole lot of time to read and really digest, but thankfully the bill, and you did a great job of presenting it. I'm just going to confess, it seems somewhat paternalistic. From what I hear you saying, it sounds like most employers are providing and taking care of their employees and doing all of this. So I guess a two-part question. One is, can you give us an idea of, not every great idea has to be legislated, right? There's a lot of mechanisms in place to do this. So one is, how widespread is a problem that we're trying to address here and now put into legislation? Because, right, we can get high-level protection through the Constitution. We can get into legislation. Obviously, we've got state agencies with regulations. So my question is, why do we need to put this in legislation? I get you're trying to create this minimum standard, but why in legislation and creating NRS that dictates these mandates that can be somewhat difficult to change or modify under certain circumstances? And might not this better be left to agencies like OSHA, or, for example, even in agencies that might not be regulated by OSHA directly, like mining or something, but like union contracts, collective bargaining agreements, things like that. So can you help me understand and help me figure out, why do we need to put this into NRS?
And I really appreciate that question, Assemblyman Urick. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record. And I apologize for not including this remark, because it was important that I addressed that in the opening remark, and I completely forgot. OSHA previously attempted to implement certain regulations before Ledge Commission. And they were talking specifically about issues like heat mitigation, illness, and air quality, et cetera. Unfortunately, it never went anywhere. It kind of turned into a more of a political dance. And as a consequence, as we're all accustomed to, we're in the legislature, we understand how that works. None of that ever ended up moving. And even if this bill right now said we're going to, even if we amended the bill now and I said you have to send it to OSHA to create regs on creating a heat mitigation plan and an air quality index plan that would trigger when it's excessively hot or the air quality is very poor. Even if I did that now, the majority of the opposition would still be in opposition with that amendment. I think if I went vague, a little bit even much more vague than that, and just said they have to address issues, I think of heat mitigation, I think that would have gotten most of the folk there. My point is, that even with that type of direction, we wouldn't have gotten all the opposition and support. My position of why that is that I think ultimately folk want to leave it up to the industries, particularly those who represent, because I believe the majority of the folk here, if not all, represent the good actors in the industry. So through that logic, it absolutely makes sense that somebody come here and say, well, my employer does this. And in fact, we might even go above and beyond. It doesn't make sense that we're doing this. Unfortunately, and I will let specifically Ms. Armaño speak about that, there are many other scenarios, not by the folk that are represented in this room, that unfortunately you'll hear about stories about folk being refused a water break. You'll hear stories about somebody having been working in very hot or heat conditions, and as a consequence to that, suffering from a heat illness. You'll hear about folk who worked during some of our fires and how they were exposed to some severe symptoms as a consequence to that, and there was never anything really in place. So just unfortunately, that's the issue we're having. And with me, when I realized that we weren't able to get it through in a conversation that I was not even involved with during Ledge Commission, then I thought that we had a responsibility to maybe take it up as a bigger body and all of us collectively engage in this conversation. I know that it's turned a little bit into a partisan conversation for a whole host of reasons, namely who's in opposition or who's in support, and that happens in this building. But I think if we put all that aside and we just sat in a closed room, I do think that we've, on many occasions, as a body, have said, we're trying to send a direct message, and I think that's how we do it through this bill, collectively, and I would wish that we could do it in a bipartisan way, collectively in saying, Nevadans have gone through hell for the past years. particularly our essential workers. There isn't a single person here, I can assure you, who probably didn't at some point in your campaign trail talked about essential workers and how we needed to take care of them. Just like we talked about taking care of gaming because that was an essential industry. And just like we talked about doing things to protect and work with our miners. There's these huge industries in the state of Nevada that we've always collectively talked about working with, and you've promised the same thing to small businesses. Some of us are small business owners ourselves, and we know how we stepped up. All of us collectively were talking about things we wanted to do for them. But I don't think we necessarily hit that line with our essential workers that are out there kind of grinding it out, particularly when most of us are indoors. And, I honestly said it before, and I'll say it again. I think all of us here would get angry if we were refused water in this building, in the comfort of this nice, beautiful committee, in this beautifully controlled, climate-controlled room. I think we would probably say, well, I think requiring water in this building is at a bare minimum, just bare minimum reasonable. And so what I am saying is the luxuries that we can have in this room, I am asking that we try to create just a minimal standard that when it's 105 degrees, folk out there and in excessive conditions can have the same. But I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Cermeño because I think she could provide some specific testimony of some of the families and workers that have reached out in support of this bill, and you'll hear from them in support as well.
For the record, Cynthia Moore, through the chair to you, Assemblyman Urick. Doing the work that we do, we have 14 different member organizations. A lot of them are on the ground on a daily basis, talking to community and hearing what's going on. Also, the area in Las Vegas where I live, a lot of my neighbors work outdoors. Many are union members, so a lot of these protections are already in place for them because they are union members. There's a lot of them that are non-union. Some of them do work for good actors. Some of them work for bad actors that are simply not providing them enough breaks to get water when they need it because they're on a time crunch to get the work done. In Las Vegas, we are getting more extreme heat waves every summer. And like the senator mentioned earlier, we do have some outdoor workers both here in Carson City and in Grand Sawyer and on the phone that can share more specific stories about their experiences working working outdoors in extreme heat during extreme heat waves, during poor air quality days, as well as working indoors in warehouses, and how this bill would help them.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions, committee members? Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you so much. I certainly love the intent of the bill. We want to make sure that we take care of all our people as well. But I would have to echo some of the sentiment of my colleague of putting it in statute versus, regulation in different departments or areas. I was just looking at not less than 1 quart of cool, potable drinking water, and I'm just thinking of people on construction sites and landscapers where you see the big multi-gallon jugs that I don't know how they would keep them cool all day unless you were expecting that somebody had to bring ice to put in them on a regular basis. And so that's just one example of one area that I would have concern with where we put it in statute and we can't fix it for 2 years versus we do work with OSHA or somebody else to come up with regulations because there's so many differences for each business and working with them directly, I think, with regulation versus statute might be better, is my only comment. But, the intent of helping all of our workers, of course, is good.
And I'll just briefly say, and thank you for that comment, Assemblywoman Kasama, Senator Edgar Flores, for the record. And the reason we have it more focused on cool, drinkable water versus how you keep it cool is because, again, in some sites, you'll see somebody who'll carry a small ice chest and with a bunch of water bottles in there. In another scenario, you'll see the big jugs that they'll fill up with ice at the beginning. I know that when I've done some outdoor work, I'll freeze my 1 gallon of water and then take it to frozen, and then throughout the day it starts to melt, and I've done that. So I know there's a whole host of ways to go about it. We just want to make sure that it is something that somebody can drink, obviously, and it's not a scenario where just, well, there's the water, and I think nobody would agree that we should be giving anybody water that's 110 degrees because it's been sitting out there all day. I think we would agree that there has to be some reasonable measure to keep it drinkable, and that's why we have it like that. But we still have it vague enough to where each industry and each job site would address it in whatever way they like. But I understand your sentiment. Thank you for that.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having this conversation. As someone who has family members that have worked outside in various jobs in the Vegas heat, it's hard. So I appreciate this. My question is, so we're talking about the Division of Industrial Relations. So I'm just trying to understand, are they developing the regulations, or is it each employer, each business, they would be having to do these programs?
Thank you for that. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, Assemblywoman Hardy. So the way it would work is if this went into play, and obviously our staff, much more capable than anybody else in this room, could clarify if I am saying anything incorrectly. But we would implement this, and then OSHA would follow up on it, right? So, and what is your heat mitigation plan? What is your air quality plan? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? So they would go off of this, and we obviously sat down with OSHA and had very extensive conversations, because I also did not want to put anything into the NRS, as Assemblyman Urick previously mentioned, that would tie the hands and or create confusion with OSHA. And they said they understand the direction that we're going, and they would simply, when enforcing this, the way they would approach it is just to make sure, okay, what is your plan? And they know that it would be different all across the board. They just want to make sure that they have it in play.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then my other question is, as you mentioned, there are, hundreds of thousands of great employers and businesses that, are good actors and know that it's hot and do what they can to help their employees. So for the bad actors, or so for those instances where someone is denied, a chance to get water or go inside where it's cool, is there a way now that, say, they could report that to somebody in the state or OSHA? Say there are rare instances of it. Is there a way that they can address that now? Say without, they don't want to go to the employer and complain, but could they go somewhere else currently to, say what's going on?
Thank you, Assemblywoman, for that question. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record. The short answer is yes. And it's not always going to be the same. Sometimes you'll hear some folk go directly to their unions if one's applicable. Some people will go to the labor commissioner. Other folk will go to OSHA. You're 100% right that the only way any of this triggers would be based on somebody filing a complaint first, because there's only 40, OSHA only has 40 inspectors statewide. So there is no possibility that they could somehow just randomly be going to all these job sites. They just don't have the enforcement arm for that. So most of this would be on the other side of it, that the violation would have to take place, and then they would have to file the complaint. And I do agree with you that in some scenarios there might be individuals, and I'm not saying, you may not be saying this, but if you were alluding to it, I do agree that there are scenarios where maybe an employee won't say anything. But I think by us creating a standard across the board, we're now making it abundantly clear where Nevada stands, and that it would make that would kind of become in my opinion, kind of the campaign for allowing folk to know what rights they have and what's the minimal standard that's in play. That's my vision with the bill. We know that often we pass legislation, not everybody becomes aware of that. And so I'm not suggesting that everyone will instantaneously know, but I do believe that there will be enough energy and kind of enough of a push that once we lay this minimal standard, that across the board, folk will start to realize, well, this is what we're supposed to be doing. All the good actors will continue to do what they do, and I assure you, good actors don't care if it's 105 degrees. They're providing water and face masks, even in different conditions. If it's 90, or they just do it as a basic everyday practice. But it's the bad actors that we're really going to put on notice, and then that I am hopeful will start to think twice about some of their practices. And I believe we can achieve that through this bill and extend beyond what we have now. If an individual now were to be refused a break, absolutely, I agree with you that there is a mechanism in place now for them to do that, to file a complaint, and they would follow one of those routes that we talked about. If somebody's being forced to work outdoors and no protection is being given to them, I believe that they could also go to OSHA and the Labor Commission and have a discussion about that. I just think what we're doing here is providing very clear guidance on these two triggers.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Flores, sort of dovetailing on my colleagues, I understand what you're trying to do, and I think you're right. There are a majority of good actors and a few bad, and it's almost like we're going to put more requirements on the majority of the good to take care of the few that are bad. But looking at your section 1 from B all the way down, reading it, it has so many requirements. I almost see what an employer is going to have to do is hire an employee to do nothing but go to monitor on every job site that an employer may have one employee just dedicated to providing water, to check the employees, go around, take temperatures, to provide, are you cool enough? Are you, and it's somewhat overburdensome to me because maybe I'm reading it too literally, but like I said, to me, it really sounds like you're going to require the employer to have an employee on each job site that they have. And if it's a construction, maybe on each floor, depending on the number of workers, that does all this monitoring, handing out water, et cetera, which to me is a real challenge. Could you help me work through that, please?
Yes, thank you, Assemblyman O'Neill, Senator Edgar Flores, for the question. I really do appreciate the sentiment of that. And I'll start off where I started the conversation, just making it clear, going back to your concern of whether or not this will require that we all of a sudden have, a designated person for this and that. I want to remind you that in 2022, in Las Vegas, there's only 38 days that it was 105 degrees or worse. So you wouldn't have to hire an individual for those 35 days in that scenario, number one. Number two, and more importantly, I believe that by simply providing water and having a plan in place, you are achieving the objective that we are setting forth. I am not asking through this bill, and I am willing to work with you in any way that you would want me to make that abundantly clear, that somehow every single day we're creating some new plan. Somehow every single day we're checking everybody's temperature. I am saying that on days that it's 105 degrees or the air quality is 201, that there's a plan in place. And that plan gets designed once by each individual employer and industry, and the industry as a whole may address it a certain way. Once you do that once, that triggers and it's in play, and that's what you do. I just wanted to make it clear that, again, you might provide an employee a mask and they choose not to wear it on a day that the air quality index is 201 or worse. You might provide an employee water on a day that's 105 or worse, and they choose not to drink it. You're not on the hook for that. You're on the hook just for providing the resource and putting it there in front of them. We know that on a construction site, you always have to wear a hard hat. You're supposed to wear steel-toe boots, and I can go on and on and on. And we know that every once in a while, somebody gets a little clumsy or tired or uncomfortable, and they may adjust their hat and take it off for a bit, or they might wear the wrong shoes to a site, or there might be somebody on the site already checking that. There's just a whole host of things that sometimes can happen. I think on job sites, it's a little bit different because there's usually going to be somebody there making sure everybody's compliant because everybody's scared of anybody getting hurt, and safety is first. So I think even in that scenario, somebody would be there taking care of that because that's what they do already. But in these scenarios that I'm trying to capture, which is the bad actors, which is probably not the folk that are represented in the room today, in that scenario, I think it's going to be very easy to identify whether or not they're compliant or not, because they're not going to have any plan in place. Because the employers are going to say, we've never gotten any water. We've never had an opportunity, or we've never been provided with a mask. We'll realize that they haven't provided any type of training to anybody on symptoms that they may be displaying as a consequence to being outside in horrible working heat conditions or air quality conditions. So my point is, I really do believe that the good actors, everything here, they're already doing, period. I don't think we're going beyond anything they're doing now. I believe that most of the good actors go beyond this now. But what we are doing is creating a minimal standard for the bad actors, who I believe aren't doing any of this. And for them, we are now creating a mechanism for employees to be in a standardized protection, this minimal line of protection that we're creating for workers. But I really do believe that everything in this bill, and you can ask, I think even if somebody represented in this room isn't providing this, I think they'd be embarrassed to admit on the record that they don't provide this minimal standard to their employees. They wouldn't. They're going to tell you we do this. And we do it and we go beyond that, I assure you. So I am just trying to look at the best practices, even then lower it a little bit and say, here's where all the good folk are at or above, and we're all going to make sure that the bad players are at that same line too.
I appreciate that, but so you only had, I forget now how many you said, at 105 and air quality 201, but where's that being taken at versus where the job site is? Because I know personally, when we've had the fires up here, we've had bad air days. I've had great at my house that the air quality or the health department's claiming in Reno, stay indoors, et cetera. It's been 105 at one place, and I'm on the 4th floor, and it's not 105 versus 104 degrees. So where are the temperatures? Is that someone having to take them at each location to decide that it's 105 at this workplace, but not that workplace? The air is 201 at this workplace, but not that work site?
Thank you for that question, Assemblyman O'Neill. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, the intention is on the site. And for the sake of clarity, this bill applies both to indoor and outdoor workers. So, for example, some of my really good friends do HVAC work, and they'll tell you that it could be 101 outside or 100, but once they go into the attic, it's going to be well over 105. It's just horrible in there. So it is intended to be on the site. But again, my intent with this bill is that it trigger that the plan have to be in place. And the way I see it working is that everybody will create a plan. The majority already have it. And on the days that, and you'll know, particularly for outdoor workers, if it's 100 degrees outside, it's 100 degrees outside. But we know that in certain areas, it will be hotter than others. And absolutely, the intent is for the folk in that specific site. I would not want to hold an entire fleet of folk where maybe they're working on 10 different job sites on a particular day, as we know that they do. You'll send 5 here, 8 here, 7 here, 3 there. I would hate for us to hold all of them under the same rules. We just want to make sure that when we're triggering these scenarios that, according to the CDC, are dangerous, that we're saying we're going to have these protections in place. And there are handheld devices that can be used now that are incredibly cheap. You can buy them on Amazon. That could help fulfill that responsibility. I don't believe that is something that's difficult to do now.
I appreciate it. I get back to, it sounds like someone is going to constantly having to be monitored. So maybe we'll talk some more. Thank you for the time, Chair. I do appreciate it.
Assemblywoman Duran.
And thank you, Chair. So just going through this, from my understanding, you are not implementing the same policy across the board for each job that somebody's doing. There may be different policies that are going, and you're not basically, or are you basically stating that they have to have the same policy, from my understanding, the way I'm reading this bill is that if the temperatures happen to go this high, you would like the company or the property or whoever's doing this to have something in place to protect the workers?
Thank you for that question, Assemblywoman Duran. Senator Edgar Flores, for the record, that is correct, with one exception. The only thing that is very specific in this bill is the requirement for some type of mass to be provided a quart of water. And those are the only two things that are very specific, but how you go about doing that is not. And the mitigation plan itself is not. That's going to be completely broad. I had a conversation with OSHA, and they would just come in, and they said the way they would enforce this would say, what is your plan? What did you have in place? Did it meet the minimal requirements that you set here? The plan will be much more detailed. I'm being overly broad because each company will have very detailed information that they will include in their plan for whatever makes sense for them, because no good employer wants an employee to get sick ever. No good employer ever wants to have a scenario where one of their employees passes out or cannot breathe as a consequence to the job site they're on. No reasonable employer would ever even allow that to be contemplated, and they're going to have a plan in place now. And whatever plan they have in place now is probably good enough. In fact, I'm sure that most of them are all good enough. This is just now requiring those bad actors, because no good actor would tell you they would ever do this without a plan. Now we're just making them have a plan as well, too.
So this would be, thank you for that. So this would be something like just basically if I went to your office, for example, and I said, okay, Mr. Flores, what do you have a plan in place just for something? Would you have to be able to put it in writing for me and show me and have your plan laid out right there?
Thank you, Senator Edgar Flores, for the record. I mean, you'll see it differently because, again, each industry is different. I've seen it in some job sites where you just go to the restroom and they put postings. If you have XYZ symptoms, you should be careful and you should do XYZ. Some folk have it in an actual manual that they hand out to all their employees. Some folk put it in the office. Maybe every morning we meet in one location. It's all laid out there, and then you go to your respective site. For some folk, it may be something that you emailed to everybody, and they all have the heat mitigation plan there or the air quality index plan. So it's going to be very different for everybody. This bill is only a requirement that it be created, period. But I do not want to dictate what is the best way for that plan to be presented to the employee. I simply want it to be presented in whatever way makes sense for that particular employer, and that makes sense for that industry.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. So we will move to testimony in support. I just want to remind everyone that we will be doing 30 minutes in support. That is 10 minutes in Carson City, 10 minutes in Las Vegas, and 10 minutes on the phone. Then we will move to testimony in opposition. I will give the first individual in opposition 10 minutes, and then their time will start. And then we will move to neutral. And with that, you may begin when you're ready.
Greg Esposito, representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades. It's been painful sitting back there, listening to the questions and not being able to jump up and answer them because I have answers to everything you guys are asking. Before my union career, I worked non-union for a plumber a little over 2 years, and I was fired twice by very good actors. I keep hearing this word good actors and bad actors. I was fired twice by very good actors who were parts of the organizations that will come up with later for having a heat emergency once and needing to sit in my car with the air conditioning, and asking for water when I was doing undergrounds in Henderson. They had decided that since I was being too troublesome and wanted, to rest and to hydrate, that I wasn't worth it as an employee. So it's not good actors and bad actors. It's foremen. It's the people on the jobs. It's the guys who are responsible for pushing the crews faster and harder. Yeah, every contractor that has a license doesn't want their people to get hurt, but the foremen don't care about you. Foremen will watch you drop as long as their productivity is going. To answer your question, Assemblyman Urich, The difference between an OSHA regulation and a law is great. I can go on any job site right now and find a bunch of OSHA violations, but I won't find very many laws being broken. Because if you violate OSHA, you fix it, you're cool. You violate a law, you get in trouble with the Nevada Contractors Board, Nevada State Contractors Board. So putting these regulations in OSHA, which by the way, there is already a document out there that says they're gonna come visit like 70 job sites or something like that, it doesn't happen. But break the law, and that's why this needs to be in law. Okay, that's why this doesn't suffice as a regulation, because there's people's health and lives. I'm looking around here and I don't see very many people who have been job scared in their lives. I've been job scared. Tommy's been job scared because we knew if we said something about what the messed up situations, we'd be fired, and then we couldn't make rent that week. So this is for all the people that are job scared out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Tom Morley, representing Laborers Local 872, Laborers Local 169, and the Communication Workers of America, and we're in support. Thank you.
Paul Catho, representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. It's not often I get to testify as an employer, but I do today. I ran our political campaign in 2022. We complied with all the provisions of this bill voluntarily, but I know that not all employers in this state will. I don't think it's overly burdensome to do so, and I urge the committee to support the bill. Thank you.
Barry Cole, B-A-R-Y, Cole, C-O-L-E. As a physician, I'm concerned about heat exposure. I'm concerned about poor air. I'm a member of a group called Nevada Clinicians for Climate Action. The requirements for water are so basic that Boy Scouts of America made this a standard in the mid-1990s, that if I went backpacking with my troop from Las Vegas, we did drink a quart of water an hour, and I checked to make sure urine was clear, colorless, and copious, meaning that the amount of water was matching the amount of perspiration and dehydration, and we went from sea level to 12,000 feet without ever having an illness. As for air quality, the use of masks is common sense. None of us would want to be outside when the air quality is above 201. These are common sense measures. I think that this is not going to be particularly onerous. Last year, I hired a contracting team to come to my home, do a bunch of construction work, and went around passing out bottles of water. And when we had the smoke last summer, I was passing out masks. So I don't think it's that hard to do this, and I hope you'll support this bill.
Will Adler, representing IBDW 1245. We're in full support of the second reprint of SB 427. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Prince Kunanan Saruhan. That's P-R-I-N-C-E-C-U-N-A-N-A-N and S-A-R-U-H-A-N. And I am a resident of South Reno, Assembly District 26 and Senate District 16. I'm also a member of Faith in Action Nevada and Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. But I come here as a serial warehouse employee. I've worked basically inside a warehouse, inside some walls, but I'm right next to the door because I've always worked receiving. And I'll tell you, there's not much difference between inside and outside when you're right next to those doors. And we have offices inside the warehouse that are climate controlled, and we can tell the difference when they are. And those people have the gall to look at us and tell us to work harder. And since I was 18 and I'm 34 now, I've been working in a warehouse, Amazon when it was in Fernley, Baker & Taylor when it was in South Reno, and different warehouses have different infrastructures for whatever kind of climate control you can call it. I currently have a heating kind of element for the winter, which breaks down most of the winter, and then there's no cooling inside the warehouse. There are water, but some of them are cold, and most of them are not. I just want to say that, the burden of protecting the workers are with the legislators, and OSHA does exist, but from the very beginning of my working here, I've always heard of them. I've never seen them. I've never seen an employer be scared of them, and they are afraid of laws. And so I encourage you to support this bill and I encourage you to protect future workers from future climate change, because we can taste the air inside a warehouse. We can see the smoke when an order picker goes up on the third floor. We can feel it on the third floor when we're picking in a warehouse, which is, an ever-growing industry in Nevada now. And there's going to be more workers. More of my family members are going to be working in warehouses for sure. And I don't think I'll stop. So please support this bill. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We stand in strong support of SB 427. Both Las Vegas and Reno have consistently ranked among the U.S.'s fastest warming cities, according to recent climate data. In 2020, employees filed 135 heat stress complaints in Nevada. By 2021, the number of complaints rose to 202 statewide, according to state data. According to the National Weather Service, a 105-degree day is classified as excessive heat, with Las Vegas's temperatures in the summer exceeding 110 degrees for more days out of the year thanks to climate change. It is imperative workers who do their jobs outdoors be given basic protections to avoid death and serious illness while doing their jobs. My husband, Nick, is an OSHA safety and health professional for a national beverage manufacturer that is located in Henderson, Nevada, and has sites all over the country. As I prepared for this testimony, I asked him about this bill, and he stated that heat stress monitoring and risk mitigation needs to be taken seriously as fall protection and confined space standards. There are jobs where even water availability isn't enough, and employers should implement work/heat stress regimens. This is also the newest OSHA National Emphasis Program, and this alone proves how imperative heat stress education and management truly is. It's his job to make sure that his business can thrive due to employees having adequate training and safety guardrails. His company already does this, and it is completely manageable. He told me that we should be the leaders in heat stress management, proving how we can effectively make our workers' health and safety a priority. The trigger for his company is 80 degrees, taking into account humidity. For companies who forego essential protections for extreme heat and poor air quality for their employees who work outside, they are risking their bottom line on top of the lives and livelihoods of those who work for them. He also stated it is needed in statute because clearly businesses skirt the rules every day, and that this should already be being done, and the fact that this isn't is even more reason to legislate it. Please pass SB 427 to ensure that Nevada's workers aren't at increased risk of death or illness. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And just so everyone knows, we will take the 3 that are sitting at the table now, and then I will have to go to Las Vegas.
Hello. My name is Marco Rauda. I'm with El Faro Consulting, but I'm here on behalf of myself. First, I want to thank the chair, the sponsor, and all the advocates on both sides for just working on this bill. I think Annette just mentioned that Clark and Washoe are the fastest growing cities. I have traveled all over the country for work back when I used to, especially be a United Food and Commercial Workers, and I've seen mitigation of heat in work sites happening all over the country, including Phoenix, who has actually moved all of their construction operations to night shifts and overnight shifts when the sun is down in order for their workers to be protected from the heat. Air quality is an issue in the state. I mean, we already have the highest asthma rates for children. Wildfires are not helping with that. I grew up with construction workers, and believe it or not, I actually was a construction worker myself with my uncles. And that was over 20 years ago. My uncles used to be kind enough to let me take summers off, and I'm pretty sure it was a way for them to protect me from the heat as well. Also, workers don't trust OSHA. My uncles didn't trust OSHA. A lot of that has to do because OSHA is underfunded and is not, they just don't have the staff to go out and help workers and to be able to take a look at all these sites. So I would urge you guys as a committee as well to maybe think about finding ways to be able to help OSHA provide essentially the safety that we need for our workers. That is their job. That is what we task them with. I want to thank everybody for giving me the time to speak. Thank you.
Edith Duarte with Strategies 360, today representing Republic Services. I do want to thank the sponsors and also the proponents of the bill for working with us. With the amendment, we are in support unless there are any other amendments that negatively impact our operations. Thank you.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tony Ramirez. I'm here representing Make the Road Nevada. I want to point out that vulnerable and essential workers brought this state back from the pandemic, and they continue to be essential in Nevada's continued recovery. This bill, in my view, provides protections to those workers who do not have a CBA. And on a personal level, I was a former outdoor worker myself. I was a farm worker. I picked cherries and pears, and I worked in the hop fields for several seasons. And we were not given water regularly. Water was attached to the back of a truck that would depart for a couple hours to other farms, and we had people falling over in fields. Nevada has 8,000 farm workers, and they do not have anyone really advocating for them. My dad is also a truck driver. He's a naturalized citizen. He's shy and fears retaliation, he tells me, as a truck driver. He would not complain to anybody, his supervisors. Please support this bill. Thank you.
Hi, committee. Isaac Chinorio with Strategy 60. Today, representing the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union. We're in full support of the bill. More in my personal capacity as well. My first job ever was in landscaping, so I worked the summers, and I know how difficult it is to work in the heat, so I urge you to support this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now move on to Las Vegas. I see there's 3 people ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. Everyone has 2 minutes each. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, member of Assembly Committee of Commerce and Labor. My name is Juan Guardado, Juan-Guardado. I am a community organizer for Chispa, Nevada, members of Environmental Justice Coalition, and I would like to remark that SB 427 would require companies to create a writing safety program and training for its employees, full-time or part-time jobs, to make sure they are well informed about the hazards and effect of working under extreme heat and how to recover from heat illness. In order to support our community, please encourage to support SB 427. Thank you.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. I want to start by personally thanking you, Chair Marzola, as your constituent down here in the Valley. I truly appreciate you providing a bill hearing. It may be just me speaking right now, but with me I carry the voices of all the coworkers that have and will continue to struggle with the heat we face down here in the South. I'm fortunate that I'm now working in a different field, but my own personal experience in 11 years as an iron worker are some of the reasons why I'm here today fighting to support this bill. I remember the days I'd be out on the job site with my coworkers on 110-degree days talking about how cool it would be if there were laws that protected workers like us from the oppressive heat we would face. Now I'm here advocating for such a thing. Simple stuff like water, shade, guaranteed hydration breaks when it's extremely hot outside could be the difference between a trip to the ER and making it home at the end of the day to spend time with your family. This bill isn't asking for a lot, but the difference it would make in improving day-to-day conditions for workers would be tremendous. I hope you all on the committee also choose to fight for Nevadans and our outdoor workers who will continue to face these extreme conditions. Please support and pass SB 427 out of committee and please provide it a work hearing. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And can you spell your name for the record, please?
Totally forgot that. DAVID-BELTRANBARJAS. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Meneses, IVON-MENESES. Thank you for letting me testify for SB 427. Like I said, my name is Yvonne Meneses, and I'm a volunteer for Chispa, Nevada. I personally have seen people and family members working under the sun without proper gear, equipment, or hydration. Some of them have suffered heat strokes. They have been admitted to the hospital due to severe dehydration, and not just that, some of them, they have lost their lives. By supporting the SB 427, will provide protection not only for employees who work directly under the sun, but also will benefit those who are exposed to extreme heat and poor air quality working indoors. I had sent a video, but I just want to do it in person. And that's why I'm here to support SB 427. And also I'm counting on your support for SB 427. Thank you.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aria Flores, ARIAFLORES, and I am in support of SB 427. This issue hits close to home for me, as I've witnessed the toll it takes on individuals firsthand. My parents worked tirelessly outdoors during the scorching summers of Las Vegas, Nevada for over 15 years. The current law's failure to define extreme heat and heat-related illnesses gives employers too much discretion in determining safety measures for their employees. This loophole allows for inconsistent standards and puts workers like my parents in harm's way. SB 427 is setting a plan in place to protect the safety of our fellow Nevadans. CCSD actually already has a precautionary plan in place for our children. CCSD policy 6114 states extreme heat exposure, inclement weather conditions, and outdoor air quality may have a negative impact on the health and safety of children and adults. Through implementation of this policy and related procedures, the staff will incorporate precautions in which minimize the greatest extent possible any risk associated with extreme heat exposure, inclement weather, and air quality conditions. By enacting SB 427, we are taking a crucial step towards safeguarding the well-being of our outdoor workers, like my parents, who dedicate themselves to their jobs despite of harsh conditions they face. No one should be able to compromise their health in the pursuit of livelihood. I urge you to support SB 427. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Rivera, Joserivera. I will be translating for Mr. Gerardo here and Mr. Roberto. Thank you.
Sí, mi nombre es Gerardo Velázquez Mendoza, miembro de Make It Over Nevada, y apoyo la SB 427. Soy uno de los miembros también trabajador al exterior de la escuela.
My name is Gerardo Velázquez. I am a member lead with Make the Road Nevada, and I am an outdoor worker.
Una de las consecuencias en el tipo de la temperatura es, tristemente, ciertas compañías no llevan las regulaciones como en el agua suficiente para los trabajadores.
One of the disadvantages in the workspace is that a lot of companies don't have the adequate procedures or strategies when I'm talking about heat-related days.
Y también violan los breaks que deben de dar para cuando están ya arriba de 100 grados temperaturas en Las Vegas.
And that breaks are not provided when we talk about 100+ degree weather.
Entonces, por ese motivo, yo estoy de acuerdo que esta ley se otorgue porque hay muchas injusticias más para todos los que trabajamos en casas de construcción.
For this reason, I am in support of SB 427 to make sure that all workers have strategies in place at their workplace.
Muchas gracias por comité por su tiempo.
Thank you so much for your time, committee. Thank you.
Buenas tardes al comité. Mi nombre es Roberto Rentería. Soy miembro y líder de Make It Road Nevada. Y gracias por brindarme esta oportunidad para testificar el apoyo a la propuesta de ley SB 427. Los trabajadores merecemos un ambiente apto para trabajar, especialmente durante el verano. La realidad de hoy es que trabajadores como yo nos detenemos a pedir ayuda por ser criminalizados tras la búsqueda de ayuda. Las condiciones climáticas están afectando a nuestras comunidades tras la ignorancia de no poder poner estrategias que vienen por nuestros líderes. Se les agradece su atención. Gracias.
Good afternoon to the committee. My name is Roberto Renteria, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify in support of proposed law SB 427. Workers deserve a suitable environment to work, especially during the summer. The reality today is that workers like me stop for help or asking for help because of being criminalized after seeking help. The climatic conditions are affecting our communities after the ignorance of not proposing strategies that come from our leaders. Your attention is appreciated. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jolina Simpson, for the record, JOLLINA SIMPSON. I'm here with Make It Work Nevada. Make It Work Nevada strongly supports this bill because we believe that the climate impacts of high heat will affect not only the outdoor workers, but their families in the long run, who will have to deal with hospitalization and, of course, long-term job loss over time. I implore you to support this bill and pass it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Alejandra Muñetón Carrera, ALEJANDRA, MUNETONCARRERA, and I would like to ditto all the commentary and support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we have time for one more testimony. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon, committee. My name is Nereida Bobadilla, NEREIDA BOBADILLA, and I ditto the above comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anyone that did not get to testify in Las Vegas, if you would please stand so we can make a record of it. Is there anyone here in Las Vegas that did not get to testify in support? Broadcast, is there anyone on the phone lines?
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 427, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 739, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. You are unmuted and may begin.
Hello, my name is Andy Beltran Barajas, ANDYBELTRANBARAJAS. And I wanted to say that I am a member of the Progressive Leadership of Alliance of Nevada. And I wanted to say hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Andy Beltran Barajas. I'm also a constituent of yours, Chair Marzola. And like my brother, I am currently an iron worker. I currently work out in extreme heat conditions and firsthand know that workers need clearly stated definitions for what extreme heat is in order to provide adequate protections. It's only May and in the mid-90s now. Soon we'll be starting summer, and I will once again be facing severe heat conditions. I hope you all, as legislators, can understand that workers like myself need adequate protections so we can continue to strengthen and build Nevada. Thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Dwight George, and I'm here to speak in support of SB 427. I'm the Environmental Justice Program Coordinator for Native Voters Alliance Nevada, a member of the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, a member of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone Tribe, and a former construction worker. Having done that work, I can say for a fact that the environmental factors described in this bill have an enormous effect on everything you do. The necessity of working outside in the heat, especially with the summers proven to be getting hotter, makes providing the proper amount of cool water and a break not only needed, but necessary for any worker to do the job safely. Also, if you have lived in Nevada, you have not only seen, but smelled and probably tasted the dangerous amount of smoke fire season brings. For our state's outdoor workers, the effects of this can be not just immediate, but long-lasting, with the potential for long-term damage to their heart and lungs due to overexposure. The necessity and importance of these jobs should not be discounted, and having to deal with these types of extreme outside factors could make an already hard job impossible to do without remaining healthy. Any good employer should know that good workers are what make a successful job, and good workers are healthy workers. To care about the job is to care for your employees, and this bill is a necessary step in making sure that that is being done. NVAN, the NAJC, and plenty of your outdoor working constituents would appreciate your support of this bill.
Oh, hello. Good afternoon, members of the committee and chair. For the record, my name is Sean Navarro. I want to strongly urge y'all to pass SB 427. As a lot of folks are speaking to today, working outside in Las Vegas is very difficult, and I think these folks need these very basic protections. And yeah, I feel something that I've spoken about a lot is in many communities, especially Latino community, and a lot of folks, they do their job without speaking up. As previously mentioned, folks are afraid to speak up on the job and fear of losing their jobs. And I think that it's so important for us to protect these very essential workers who've literally built our great communities here in Nevada. Thank you so much.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carla Sanchez, K-A-R-L-A-S-A-N-C-H-E-Z, and I'm a youth organizer with Make the Road Nevada. But today I'm calling on behalf of my father, my mother, my grandfather, and my uncle. My family members have been outdoor workers all my life, and I have seen firsthand the extreme conditions they have to work in and how it impacts their health. Like the people before me have said, a lot of these workers don't have anyone advocating for them, and a lot of them are afraid of retaliation, especially immigrant workers. I urge you to support SB 427. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. This is Wendy Newman, W-E-N-D-I-N-E-W-M-A-N. I am the Assistant Executive Director for the Southern Nevada chapter of the National Electrical Contractors Association, NECA, and we are in support of SB 427. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chastity Martinez, C-H-A-S-I-T-Y-M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z. I'm a resident of Reno and organizer with Faith in Action Nevada. Just want to say ditto and to offer our support for SB 427. And also just want to state that we all know Nevada is home to two of the fastest performing cities in the U.S. and received failing grades, both those cities did, for air quality. So it's really essential that we have these protections for our workers. So urge your support. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Chair Marzullo and members of the committee. Thank you for the time to speak. My name is Janet Carter, J-A-N-E-T-C-A-R-T-E-R, and I speak today on behalf of the Sierra Club and our over 30,000 members and supporters in the state of Nevada. The Sierra Club is a very proud member of the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, and we strongly support SB 427, the bill that would help protect workers from exposure to excessive heat and poor air quality. I will keep my comments brief. We all know that rising temperatures and poor air quality are increasingly becoming major problems in Nevada. Few of you would tolerate working in temperatures greater than 105 without shade and water. Why should we expect the Nevada workers that are our greatest resource to do so? All of us can agree that workers can be provided simple remedies such as providing shade, water, protective clothing, and the like. This is simply the humane thing to do. It is time to recognize that climate change can be a killer and that its effects are hardest on working people in disadvantaged communities. All Nevadans deserve a comfortable and safe working environment. Again, we thank you for your strong support of SB 427 so this will happen, and we thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Lisenby, K-A-S-S-A-N-D-R-A,
Sandra, last name Lisenbee, Lisenbee, for the record. I'm speaking on behalf of Great Basin Resource Watch. We are also a member group of the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, and I would like to testify and just say a big ditto in support of AB 427. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez. I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO, and on behalf of over 150,000 members and more than 120 unions, the Nevada State AFL-CIO proudly supports Senate Bill 427. I would also like to say thank you to Senator Edgar Flores for bringing light to such a serious subject. Thank you for trying to take care of our community members. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits, 224, you are unmuted and may begin.
Hello, members of the committee and Chair Marzola. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. For the record, my name is Angel Lascano, ANGEL-LAZCANO. I'm a resident of Senate District 10 and Assembly District 3 and formerly an outdoor worker myself. I would like to ditto what everyone has spoken and just kind of elaborate on, the time I used to work outside. I was a car wash attendant as one of my first jobs, and I remember the hot, blistering days working in the heat, how sick I would feel and the amount of days I would miss during those times because I'd be working in the 110-plus degree heat, and there was no real... My job at the time didn't really elaborate on, what were best practices or anything like that, and while I don't work in those conditions anymore, I fear for the future of outdoor workers as our summers get hotter and climate change takes greater effect on our most vulnerable communities. This bill would establish a bare minimum to help our most hardworking families get the protections they need, and I urge y'all to pass this bill. Thank you so much.
Callers, if you've recently joined and like to testify in support to Senate Bill 427, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Broadcast, we have time for one more caller.
One moment, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 554, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
I'd like to thank the chair and the committee for giving this bill consideration. My name is Dexter Lynn.
I think you're having... We're not able to make out what you're saying. Are you still there?
No, we've lost that caller, Chair, and that was the last caller in support.
Thank you. If the person does call back, please let me know. We will move to testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 427. Just as a reminder, I will give the initial opposition 10 minutes to speak, and then we will begin the 30 minutes. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moratkin, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. As the state's largest and broadest-based business organization in Nevada, the Chamber is opposed to Senate Bill 427 in its original print and its current revised print and the several different amendments that have been proposed during this process. We look at each piece of legislation and we see how it will impact the 70 sectors and industries that we represent that drive Nevada's economy. Our members, the job creators of the state, employ approximately 500,000 Nevadans. We have significant concerns with Senate Bill 427 since it was introduced and the intent of the bill and what policy solution it is trying to solve. I do want to acknowledge several of the proponents that have reached out to the business community on this bill and the conversations we've had in the last several weeks and months. In regards to that policy discussion, we have asked which industries have not been addressing employee safety so we can properly address those concerns through this bill or through regulations. Unfortunately, I do not think that we've been able to truly understand which industries are concerned as it relates to heat mitigation and how we can properly address those concerns. Therefore, it leads the employer community to ponder the viability of establishing such a broad policy when it comes to these employment conditions and the unintended consequences that we believe that it will create. These provisions are not simple, and attempting to have one uniform approach for Nevada, we believe, is not the best approach from the Chamber perspective. This bill will create a whole new plan also for air quality that was not part of the original bill, which we will also believe will create additional challenges for compliance and for interpretation by regulations and by the business community how to properly fulfill it. Also relating to the sections of the bill are the requirements listed, which are broad-based and concerning how the business community is to comply with both components in regards to heat mitigation and air quality. While these requirements may appear to be common sense, we do believe these regulations can be complicated, egregious, burdensome, and confusing because each industry in Nevada's sector is different, and they need to respond differently in order to comply and to protect their workers. For example, like industries like construction, landscaping, pool maintenance, restaurants or outdoor seating, outdoor entertainment venues, agriculture, utilities, transportation, each have different needs and requires flexibility to best protect their employees and to effectively address heat and air quality mitigation concerns. In the data provided in the February 28, 2022 memo from the Division of Industrial Relations, they report in the last full data in 2021, 49 worker comp claims were accepted and 20 denied for a total of 69 claims. Based on the data, the workers' comp trends have remained relatively consistent throughout the last 4 years of that reporting period. In that same year, there were 202 heat stress complaints filed statewide. To put that in perspective, Nevada has approximately 1.5 million workers in the workforce. That percentage is 0.00001346 of all Nevadans workers that filed a complaint about heat mitigation. The reason that number is low, in the Chamber's opinion, is employers are proactive and do the right thing to protect their employees in Nevada's arid climate. Our members simply do not believe in willfully endangering his or her employee. It does not make sense to do so, and I know no business plan of our members that incorporate that into it. If employers do not take this issue seriously, you would probably see thousands and thousands more complaints filed, but that is not the case. Again, because Nevada workers that we represent understand the importance of worker health and safety, it is common sense. It also leads to the question how these policies will overlay with existing regulatory requirements as well as collective bargaining agreements between the employer and the organized labor community. It's also important to note that federal OSHA is currently in the rulemaking process regarding heat mitigation standards. Federal OSHA is actively working on the development of standards to this heat mitigation conversation for the entire country. Many of our members and industry and partners are concerned that the provisions of this bill could potentially conflict with any rules that may be issued by federal OSHA. We know, of course, federal regulation and guidance will take precedence, but if these rules do not match up, it will create confusion for employers. Also, many times collective bargaining agreements address worker safety concerns that are negotiated specifically to the industry, and that's where we believe these belong, in the collective bargaining agreements. We also have industries that, of course, are heavily regulated for their outdoor activities federally as well. That is why the Chamber believes that such a wide approach is not the best approach for Nevada. We believe Senate Bill 427 will cause confusion and safety issues for workers with this broad approach towards worker safety regulations. We do not believe this bill will foster economic activity with burdensome regulations that are excessive in nature, but rather will hinder it. I should note there is a revised fiscal note from the state that indicates a cost of almost $700,000 for the biennium for new positions for enforcement. OSHA does inspect businesses, and I think we saw it very clearly during COVID, the inspection rates that were occurring with COVID standards we saw during that period. And also, our employers and our members take OSHA regulations and state labor laws exceptionally seriously. There's no question about that from our membership. We are committed to preserving a business climate and work safety climate that are successful both employer and employee. We also, of course, support and believe in worker safety and health standards and protecting our employees. But Senate Bill 427 is not the right approach, and we urge this body not to support this bill today. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Misty Grimmer representing the Nevada Resort Association. I think Mr. Murad can put, the vast majority of our concerns on the record. But I would note that it has been a confusing process trying to understand exactly what version of the bill we're looking at. If you guys moved a bill today, I'm not actually sure what you're moving. However, I do want to put on the record that the casino resort industry, we are the largest employers in the state, and we do take the safety of our employees extremely serious. And we do have a huge array of different types of jobs at our hotels and in our pool areas and in the maintenance areas. So to Mr. Murakin's point, a blanket approach that's going to fit the entire industry and fit every type of situation is really not that workable. And we would also echo his comments that federal OSHA is looking at this, and it might be wise for the state to take a minute and wait and see what they're going to do, and also take a minute and look and see really who the problem players are. We're huge employers. I believe we pay through assessment for the cost of OSHA. So if there are bad actors, let's target the bad actors. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Josh Hicks, H-I-C-K-S. I'm with McDonald Carano, and I'm here representing the Nevada Home Builders Association, which is composed of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association and the Builders Association of Northern Nevada. This is an industry that builds homes and advocates for homes throughout the state. It's certainly an industry that knows something about building homes in Nevada. They've been doing it for decades in our hot climate and have found some good ways to do it. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you heard about the process, the regulatory process that was undertaken in late 2021 and early 2022. That was a look at some regulations. There was a lot of opposition, including from the home builders. And I would put that as because those regulations were very technical, they were very prescriptive. But one good thing that came out of that process is that OSHA provided some data to stakeholders. And you heard Mr. Muradkin talk a little bit about that during his testimony. But there is a process to file heat illness complaints with OSHA. And there have been complaints filed. And I'll focus just on the construction industry side of those complaints. There was a 6-year period, or I'm sorry, a 5-year period that OSHA provided data on. And in the construction industry, there were 30 heat-related complaints throughout the state. So that's 6 per year. To give you some context, in that same time frame, there were 453,733 construction jobs in the state over that same 5-year period. That's an average of 90,745 construction jobs per year. That number, and you heard Mr. Murad can provide one as well, is 0.000067. That's the percentage of construction employees who had a heat illness complaint. Now, I bring all that up not to suggest that this isn't an important subject by any means, but I bring it up because I think it shows that contractors and home builders are diligent and careful about their employees. And they do provide they do look out for that. It's obviously not in their best interest to have employees go down.
Please wrap up your testimony.
Am I at 2 minutes already?
Yes.
Thank you. So for those reasons, we oppose the bill. We see it as prescriptive, overly broad, and something that should be done in a more deliberative fashion. Thank you.
Chair Marzola and members of the committee, Lindsay Knox with McDonald Carano, here representing the Nevada Restaurant Association. Throughout Nevada, restaurants and food service outlets employ almost 220,000 Nevadans. Over a 5-year period, which Mr. Hicks mentioned, specific to restaurants and food service outlets, 202 complaints were filed with OSHA, which equals 0.0009% of restaurant and food service outlet employees. OSHA already has the authority to require training, signage, and acknowledgement of existing standards of heat prevention strategies. We believe SB 427 is an overreach of the restaurant industry, which takes great pride in educating its members on matters such as heat mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mac Bybee. I represent the Associated Builders and Contractors of Nevada. There's no higher priority for ABC members than to ensure health and safety of their employees on the job site. ABC considers itself an organization that promotes world-class safety practices in the construction industry, and our members take pride in their safety culture. The construction industry has developed best practices for mitigating heat stress and protecting individuals on the job site. Current industry practices have been successful at mitigating the effects of heat exposure, and employee awareness efforts are currently made. The truth is that OSHA already has the ability to regulate heat illness through what is known as the General Duty Clause in existing law. Employers can be cited violations under the General Duty Clause for any recognized hazard that exists in the workplace, and the employer does not take reasonable steps to prevent or abate those hazards. Heat illness is a known hazard on the job site. It is my fear that this legislation will interfere with current industry practices that have proven to be effective in exchange for an arbitrary punch list. There's a couple items that were brought up and about breaks. I'm going to go off script here. Breaks are actually in the law. Anybody who has employees or is an employer understands that your employees have required breaks. So those individuals that aren't allowing breaks are breaking the law. The Labor Commissioner exists for wage complaints, for labor law complaints. There are avenues that exist to try to protect those employees, and I believe an education effort to let those individuals know that there are protections in place that exist would be a better avenue spent. But for those reasons, we oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association, and we're in opposition to Senate Bill 427 because it is broad and prescriptive, and I don't think it contemplates what a lot of those real-world impacts and challenges that are with some of that very prescriptive language. Yeah, I represent a very diverse industry, not just in terms of large companies that provide uniforms that have cooling fabric technology built into them, but also small ones who may not be showing up. Their employees may not be showing up to the same place every day. They may not be ending their day at the same place. It's very diverse in terms of what we do. We have, a guy who could be in an air-conditioned cab getting a ocean container put on a chassis, and then later that day be up on top of the truck putting some bales of hay, securing that load where he could be or she could be exposed to heat. So trying to determine when that's going to happen is difficult for our members. Once again, by the nature of the job, truckers are remote employees, and it is very difficult to say, hey, truck driver, you're going to be going into this area that could meet this specific criteria, and you need to have water for every hour that you're going to be out there. Sometimes you may not know how long you're going to be out securing a load, securing a piece of equipment, securing that bales, that big bale of hay that I'm talking about. So that is a challenge. Shade, providing shade at a customer's facility that we don't own, that we don't control, that could be a challenge. And monitoring employees, monitoring their health when, once again, they are remote, that is another issue that we have, which is why we oppose this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Glenn Levitt, the Director of Government Affairs for the Nevada Contractors Association, representing over 450 contractors, subcontractors, and industry affiliates, primarily in Southern Nevada. The NCA considers safety its top priority, and the health and welfare of its employees is paramount. The craft professionals that show up to the construction site every day are the lifeblood of our industry. Ensuring the safest work environment possible is critical to operating a successful construction company. Unfortunately, this bill does not further the goal of job site safety. Instead, it creates a punch list of perceived problems and creates a prescriptive, inflexible statutory construct. Las Vegas is hot in the summertime. I think we can all agree on that. As such, the potential for heat illness is a known hazard that is currently addressed in the worksite safety process. The NCA and its members will continue to provide a safe environment for their workforce. Unfortunately, this legislation does not increase that effort. For these reasons and those stated, we are in opposition. Thank you.
Before we get started, no, you're fine. We have gone 10 minutes here in Carson City. Let me go to Las Vegas. If there's no one there, I will come back here. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Okay, I don't see anybody in Las Vegas, so you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association. Our trade association represents all of the new car, light-duty truck, and heavy-duty truck dealers across the state. We make approximately 20% of the retail economy. We're at the table, obviously, in opposition to Senate Bill 427. We take our employees' safety very seriously. Businesses aren't successful enough unless you have good employees, happy employees, safe employees. So I want to make sure that that's on the record. During, I believe it was our first working group, stakeholders group, we were discussing, and you heard statistics in terms of the complaints that were filed with DIR. I'm pulling off a memory here, so I may be off, and if I am, please somebody correct me. But when you look at the complaints for 2021, which was 202, they dropped precipitously, in 21, they dropped precipitously in 2022 by about 30%. And it's directly attributable to the campaigns as referenced by Mr. Muradkin, Ms. Magnus, and those are public awareness campaigns with respect to heat illness and heat mitigation. It was recommended from the stakeholders group that becomes basically the main meat and potato of the bill. It worked, and I think it will work. And in fact, when you look at what OSHA is doing right now, so we're here because we believe that's a simple, common sense, effective improvement solution to this issue that everybody is trying to address. Further, take into consideration that federal OSHA is putting this together. We want to be able to avoid any conflict with federal law that may come down the pike, and then couple with SB 427. I know I'm out of time, Madam Chair, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Terry Graves, representing Nevada Manufacturing Association, and we share the same concerns that have already been spoken to on the specificities of this proposed legislation. We don't think we ought to be in statute that those items that ought to be in regulation where they can be dealt with in a flexible manner. Manufacturing has a wide variety of operations and occupational safety issues, and having worked in an industry for 30-some years, I know we pay a great deal of attention to safety issues, not just heat, but all other possible safety hazards within manufacturing operations. So with that experience, I do not think this bill is a good idea, and we do, as a Manufacturers Association, oppose it. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee, Peter Kruger with I3 Public Affairs. This afternoon, proudly representing petroleum marketers. These are, for the most part, our wholesale members that operate in terminals, which there are 3 in Las Vegas, where we deal with hazardous material and all the requirements where in our judgment, this one-size-fits-all bill just make it very, very difficult. Since 2 years ago, when OSHA proposed the regulations, our group, and I'm sure other industries, immediately adopted those proposed regulations and continue to use those to this day. So we believe that what this bill is trying to do is already in place. It is being used by what has been referred to as good employers. and we expect that to continue. So one size fits all. We believe this type of prescriptive requirements belongs in regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be able to take the three of you, and then I'm going to the phone lines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you. For the record, Trey Abney, representing the 2,000 member businesses of NFIB in Nevada, National Federation of Independent Business. I want to thank Senator Flores and my friend Ms. Moore for bringing this bill forward. And even though we couldn't get there, appreciate working with them. The 2,000 member businesses of NFIB have 2,000 different ways of doing business every day, different challenges that they face, different regulations that they face. Their average employee count for an NFIB member in Nevada is 4 to 8 people. And so, as you know, Madam Chair, small businesses already struggle with all of the different, not just the state agencies they have to deal with, but at the federal level as well. And especially now if we're talking about, as mentioned earlier, that federal OSHA is coming up with its own standards. And for the smallest of the small to have to deal with something else that we think can already be addressed in current statute is a bridge too far for us. And so for those reasons, we oppose this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Marzola and members of the committee. Carrie Kramer on behalf of NAOP. With more than 663 members statewide and over 288 affiliated businesses in the commercial development, construction, and property management fields, our members represent the largest non-gaming economic driver in the state of Nevada, and we are here today in opposition to SB 427. I will not repeat all the points already made by my colleagues, but will echo them and their concerns with this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Tom Clark. I'm here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. I really appreciate Senator bringing this bill forward. I think that, especially in the southern part of our state, where you do have the heat-related issues, if we get to 105 in northern Nevada, it's like we're going to take the day off anyway. It's time to go to the lake. So we recognize the importance of the issue. We think that it is a centralized issue. You've heard from a lot of the industries that are our members, and we echo their responses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will go to the phone lines. If there is the 10 minutes left from the phone lines, I will come back to Carson City once again. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 427?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 427, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Brian Wachter. I serve as the Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada. We, too, are in opposition to Senate Bill 427, and for many of the same reasons that have been stated by my colleagues there in Carson City. We also heard a lot about the different environments in which we found ourselves, for instance, in COVID. From the retail industry standpoint, we were one of the few industries that continued working throughout the entirety of that COVID period. And interestingly enough, one of the OSHA requirements for the retail industry during the summer of 2020 was that we physically had to have an employee standing outside monitoring the social distancing line, as well as trying to regulate the mask situation before they go into our stores. And so you can see how all of this intertwines. And so putting it into statute and NRS would make it difficult to be flexible. I would also note that amongst our membership, we have many landscapers, pool service companies, home cleaning services that are not actually in possession or ownership of the different locations that their employees are in, and really have no way of knowing what the conditions are going to be inside a particular home. And we certainly, as a very mobile business, are in different parts of the valley in Clark County where it may not be 105 anywhere but Spring Valley or anywhere but Paradise. And so that'll make it very difficult for our mobile members to be able to figure out what exactly those requirements are. In addition, most of our members are actually small mom and pop owned outfits. And so this is going to greatly increase some costs for them to make sure that they're in compliance, make sure that they are covered their legal basis, make sure that they are not liable for any issues. And that's going to take away from them being able to continue to grow their business and continue to hire employers in Nevada. And for those reasons, we are opposed to Senate Bill 427.
Callers, if you've recently joined and like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 427, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will come back to Carson City. We have 8 minutes left.
I'll be very quick. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola, Chase Whittemore, Argentum Partners on behalf of Nevada Builders Alliance, and we are also opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Isaac Hardy, representing the Urban Consortium, which is made up of Reno, Sparks, Henderson, Las Vegas, and North Las Vegas. I also will keep it brief and just echo the comments of my colleagues. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Ashley Cruz with Carrera Nevada for the record, here on behalf of the Mechanical Contractors Association and Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning Contractors Association. And in the interest of time, I will just echo the comments of the people before me. Thank you so much.
Chair Marzola, members of the committee, Connor Kane on behalf of the Henderson Chamber of Commerce and its over 1,800 members, most of which are small businesses who are also in opposition. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Nick Vanderpool with Flynn Judici Government Affairs here today on behalf of American AVK. Ditto my colleagues' comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see any. We will move to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 427? I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in neutral for Senate Bill 427, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, can the committee hear me?
I can. You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Yes, Chair. Hi, name's Alexander Avila for the record. Here on my own behalf, as a resident and longtime Nevadan here in Las Vegas. I was just here testifying. I'm actually testifying in support of the bill. I just couldn't call earlier. I got pretty busy, but I just want to express my support for it, just what it means to me personally,
Sir,
family.
Sir,
Yes, sorry.
We have closed testimony and support, but if you would like to submit your support in writing, I will make sure that the committee gets it. And I appreciate you calling in.
Thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Broadcast, is there anyone on the line to testify in neutral?
Chair, there are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Did the individual who got cut off earlier in support call back?
There, we're still having connectivity issues, Chair, and they are not on the line, no.
Okay, thank you. Senator, would you like to give any closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the committee's indulgence. Senator Edgar Flores for the record. I wanted to get a couple of things clarified for the committee. I realized that there was a lot of conversations about really small businesses and the potential impacts to them. Presently under NRS 618.383, if I direct your attention to specifically page 3 of the bill, it just says an employer who has 10 or fewer employees is exempt from the provisions of this section unless the employer has an employee engaged in the manufacture of explosives. I just wanted to make it clear that we're not capturing those folk. So the record needed to reflect that. And as I specifically spoke to at the very beginning of the bill presentation, I understand the concern from industries suggesting that they're already doing it, so the bill's not necessary. And I respect that. I get it. And I would never just bring something that has some type of metaphorical and or good feel value, particularly on this eve of a deadline. I think this conversation needed to be had. Other states have implemented similar like measures, and that is not to suggest that Nevada is identical to them
or that we have to do it because they're doing it. But it is to suggest that this notion that this only belongs in regs but not in statute is not actually true, because we've seen that in other states. I believe that when you put something in statute and not punt it to regs, we'll do two things. Number one, it's going to move away from the political football that we've seen happen already. Regs have been tried, and unfortunately, they did not come through. We avoid that. And number two, we are sending a message to folk that work in these extreme heat conditions and horrible air quality conditions, a very clear message that we as a state have made it abundantly clear that we have a responsibility and a requirement to protect them. Because saying that we should just punt this over to regs, unfortunately, has not been a solution. It's been tried and it has failed. What I am asking is that we consider, like other states, in a bipartisan manner, to approach and create a minimal standard that every person here says they do anyways. So they're not impacted. Their opposition is, we just don't need it, but we already do it. And in that lens, and in that respect, and in that regard, you're not going against or going to impact any of them because they're doing it already. They just told you that. The really small businesses that they were concerned about, we're not impacting those. They're not touched by this bill. I am just saying that maybe as a state, we could take a position of saying thank you to the folk who have stepped up in the most difficult times and have done the jobs that are so incredibly difficult. And every single one of you, when you're out there knocking doors, you know how hard it is just to get from one door to another when it's that hot, particularly in the South. I am asking, now imagine if that's the only way you can feed your family, if maybe we collectively can send a message to every out there worker who's endured the most difficult times during the pandemic and continues to take on these responsibilities, that we got your back. That's what I'm asking you to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your presentation, Senator. I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 427. I will now open up for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to provide public comment? I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. We will not adjourn at this moment. We are going into recess.